We are recording.
All right, so the Parks Committee meeting is now in session, and I just want to, before we start, say that everything that comes to council tonight, or comes to committee tonight, will go to council next Tuesday, so I just want to make sure I get that out there before we start. We're going to go ahead and do roll call. We got Alder Weary,
Here.
Alder DeLee,
Here.
Alder Presley,
Here.
and myself, so we are all here. And looking for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve. Second.
Who said it first? Now it's harder for me, I don't know why.
Can't
Okay,
see.
but Alder DeLee, and then seconded by Alder Presley? Okay. All in favor, say aye,
Aye.
and that passes. So approval of the minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, moved to approve by Alder DeLee,
Second.
second by Alder Weir. I'm looking down there to see. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that is approved. So we'll move on to regular business. Consideration with possible action on the purchase of a container bar from the Hawk Group using ARPA interest funding for the total cost of $119,500. Director?
Yes, so as you can see from the agenda item, we're looking at seeking approval to, excuse me, purchase a container bar along with other amenities from the Hawk Group for a total cost of $119,500. Right before the meeting, I did hand out a single source form that the purchasing agent for the city signed, agreeing that this would qualify as a single source for the reasons listed on the information. I will make sure to include that in the agenda packet for the council meeting. I didn't have it ready for the agenda packet yesterday. But to give you a little summary of why we're proposing it and where it's going to go, primarily, or at least initially, the goal would be to purchase this facility and place it at Light Park. So just today, we had a press conference where we announced two very large concert venues that are going to happen, kind of bookending the draft. And our hope is to get this purchased and placed at Light Memorial Park in time for those draft events. Obviously, we'll be able to make some revenue as a city if that facility is there and we're able to serve beverages out of that facility. And our thought process is it would stay there maybe throughout the entire summer season, possibly for the concerts. If On Broadway would like to utilize that building for their concert events, they would have access to doing that, and we could work out an agreement with them to utilize that concession trailer. But then after that, our goal would be to place this at Light Memorial Park. I'm sorry, at Shipyard. So it would only be at Light Memorial Park for 1 year, and then it would go to Shipyard. As you know, we've already built phase 1 of Shipyard, which is the shoreline improvements. We have a consultant under contract right now to design phase 2, which is all of the park amenities. And then there is a phase 3 plan for the Shipyard, which is a container building that is renovated to house different commercial activities in there. So, you know, we could have little restaurants in there, little shops. There could be public restrooms attached to that. But that'll be part of phase 3. And the city does not have funding right now to develop phase 3 anytime in the near future. But it is in the master plan for that park. So what our hope is if we purchase this unit, we would actually place this at the Shipyard where phase 3 would eventually go. But what this would do is provide a concession trailer and a beer garden experience at the Shipyard for several years until phase 3 is actually developed. At that point, maybe we pull it out, or maybe we just leave it there permanently. And that would be the city's beer concession area from here till eternity. So short term, it's, we're trying to get it in here in time for the draft. Long term, it will be moved to a different park for many years. It'll stay there. What we're hoping to do is not just purchase the unit itself, but what we're proposing is to purchase all of the amenities that go along with that to, in essence, be a turnkey beer garden. So it's not just the trailer, there's a lot of other amenities that go along with that, which include picnic tables, seating, lighting, various lawn games. It includes everything within the concession trailer that we would need to operate, such as a POS system, all the different coolers we would need, security system, internet system to run the POS system. So, like I said, it would be a turnkey proposal. And then in addition, there would be a little storage container off to the side where we could house the tables and chairs when we're not using it for an event. So it would be protected and in a safe condition until the time we need it, and then we can pull it out and set it up for various events. We are proposing to use ARPA interest funding for this. To date, I believe, I did talk to the finance director, and to date, there's been 8 projects that have already been approved and allocated using the ARPA interest funding. There's more than enough money in that account to cover the purchase of this facility. I do also just want to mention that there isn't a lot of time from here until the draft, and this is a unit that they don't have in stock. So they have to actually build it to our specifications. So if there is an interest by the committee and council to have this unit here in time for the draft, really time is critical. If we do not approve this today and at council next week, I can't guarantee at this point it would be here for the draft. I know we did have some initial conversations with them today, and they did stress very strongly that the sooner we make this decision, the better, if you want a firm commitment that this is going to be here in time for the draft. So that's the general overview. I guess, James, did I miss anything?
No, just in the big vision, we're always looking at different ways to activate parks, to bring people together, to raise revenue. This is a trend we've been seeing, nationwide, of bringing, these type of amenities within a park system. Reached out to Milwaukee County, of course, they have 12 of these, and they're all doing very well with how they're operating and people coming to them. And so it's something that we just, as a city of Green Bay, looked at as, something that would possibly be a good investment within our park system to, like I said, help raise revenue, activate spaces, and just overall, just look at how our park system can be, also continue to be diverse and add new things.
And one thing I also wanted to point out, with this particular vendor, they make these facilities or amenities out of shipping containers, which is the theme of the Shipyard Park. So it'll really fit in nice architecturally with the long-term vision of the park with this particular unit.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually gonna have you, does anybody have any questions before I make my comments?
I do.
Okay.
I guess I'll start out with, I love the idea. I think it's great. The one concern I have with it is, will it be a mobile unit that can be transported to other sites than just Lights Park or Shipyard?
So
For a
the
situation like we talked about, the pickleball tournament or any of that sort of thing,
Yep.
is that something that it could be utilized for?
So a couple of things with that. So one is, this is a portable unit is what they're calling it, but it's not on wheels. So every time we would have to move it or desire to move it, in essence, we'd have to probably outsource a company to come in with the correct vehicle to kind of load it up onto a trailer, and then we would haul it and move it to another facility. So similar to maybe a tow truck with the lifting capabilities. The other thing to note is, per city ordinance, if it sits in one site more than 6 months consecutively, then it does have to be bolted down as though it was a permanent structure. So I think initially, when it's at Light Park for the first year, we would not be bolting it down, and it can be moved to various locations. But the end goal for this unit is to primarily keep it at the shipyard. So we would be looking at bolting it down. Now, is there a way we can engineer it so that we can unbolt it on occasion? It would be a little, a little bit of a hassle to do that, but maybe there's the potential to do that. But if we don't bolt it down, then we would have to, it can't be a permanent fixture in the park.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on staffing this?
Excuse me. We have several thoughts. So there's probably 3 different approaches we could take on this. Option 1 is, as you know, we just passed the ordinance which allows the city to sell beverages, for a beer garden. So that would be one option, where the city could actually hire staff, and whenever we have an event out there where, we want to host a beer garden, we can actually make 100% of the revenues for the city. Option 2 is we contract those services to an outside agency, maybe a partnering group. I don't want to speak for On Broadway, but that is, near On Broadway. Is that something that they might want to do? I don't know. We haven't had those discussions with On Broadway yet. And the third option is to actually contract it out with a company where they do everything. And there is no cost to the city, and then the city would in turn just keep a portion of the profits that they make in gross revenue.
And so on that, has there been any research on what these containers are bringing in for revenue in the parks?
Yes, there has. This particular unit is being utilized at Milwaukee County for a lot of their beer garden areas, and James did most of the research on this project, so I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah, they, so on this setup with a beer garden like this, in Milwaukee County, it made, in the first year, they made $28,000, and that was contracting with an outside company to do everything. They did the staffing, they ordered the product, they stocked it, they did all, essentially they worked with Milwaukee County to identify what the events and what the hours of operation and what everything looked like, but essentially this group did everything and then cut Milwaukee County a check at the end of year 1. Now what they found out is it was very popular, and they doubled the tables and the different amenities within the beer garden, and they essentially doubled the revenue year 2. So that's kind of what we're going off of as a structure and of what it could bring in, and but that's an outside agency. If we ran it, or if we partnered with an agency that is also accustomed and well experienced in running different events, I could see that number potentially going up. But also, once again, the expenses would be there as well, depending on if we operated directly or depending on who operated. But the potential for revenue is there. When I talk to these groups, they say you'd see your return on investment within potentially even 2 years, but 3 to 4 years for sure. So
That's great.
Okay, anybody else? Alder Presley.
Thank you, Chair. What is the lifespan of one of these?
a container itself, a long, long time.
Well, so Milwaukee has the same one, right? They're still running fine?
They
It's
have-
just like a unique
So-
building or structure.
Milwaukee now has 12 beer gardens that they're operating within their park system. So, yeah, they're all still running. These containers last a very, very long time. I would assume some of the, inner, the thing would be how long do the tappers and, those kind of, the coolers and those kind of things. But even the amenities would be to a pretty high-quality standard as described in this proposal. So I couldn't give you an exact number. I'd have to look at, kind of what that would be, but it's made to last a long time.
Cool.
So is it, you raised your hand, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a couple questions. Well, first of all, I'm just wondering, because it is, the ARPA interest as far as going through us rather than going through finance. Well, what would be the reason for, so instead of having it like, I'll just give you, because my thoughts are like basically when we were going through the whole ARPA thing, I don't like the whole piecemeal thing because I feel like it's, we're not making the best decisions because we don't have it all in front of us. And so this is kind of one of those things, you know, because it's from the ARPA interest. You said there's already been 8 projects. But, and I understand not everybody has the same ideas at the same exact time, so.
So what I could tell you is I did review this with the finance director in advance, asked which committee we should bring it to. I think she felt that it was appropriate to bring to Parks Committee, but it could have also gone to Finance also. The reason we brought it to Parks was because typically whenever we purchase an item for related to the parks, we bring all of those purchases forward through the Parks Committee. But I do, you know, understand the comments and the concerns with it going to potentially Finance Committee instead. You know, the issue that we have to deal with now is if there is a desire to refer this to the Finance Committee, it's gonna add time to the process, which if that's what the committee and council wants to do, we'll go through that process. But like I said before, time is of the essence if the desire is to have this here by the draft. So.
And then I'm wondering, is it self-contained as far as, does it need plumbing or electricity? I mean, it seems like it includes, let's see, single external plug powers entire structure. You know, any kind of setup, extra.
Yeah, essentially they described it as, think about a very large RV.
Okay.
That's the electricity plug-in that you'd need to do that. I even talked to them about, well, do we need 220 or do we need 110? And they actually said you can run it off 110. So that's also something that was considered, you know, where we place it at Light, because we do have actually electricity already there, and we wouldn't need much infrastructure with that, so that was considered as well. So it doesn't take a lot to run it. We would not need plumbing or anything like that, you know.
Okay.
I mean, long-term, if we put a shipyard and we decide to add kind of and make it even kind of the more permanent site, and then we can talk about those different amenities as we go forward and what we put in or, you know, place in there.
So you do not need water and sewer is what we were told
Okay.
for this facility, but you do need electric.
Okay. Elder Johnson, you had some.
Yeah, and I talked to Dan and James both about this earlier today, and I, kind of told them, look, I'm not going to be objectionable to this, but I did have questions, right? And we had a conversation, I got some of those answered. The one thing I just, for clarity's sake, right, we have not had any conversations around my employer, like occupying this or using it or managing it. And I just think it's very important for me to make that clear because I want to avoid, obviously, a conflict on this. And so, I don't have that conflict right now because those conversations haven't occurred, and they're just kind of offering that up, I presume, as an example. The one thing, though, that I would just maybe kind of at least chip into the dialogue, though, just since it was brought up, and I told this to James earlier today, I don't know if this is something our organization would want to use, right? We have a system for when we do portable events, and it's a tent and a portable bar, and all of the product that we need is enclosed in the trailer, and it's, right, got everything we need. If something like this were to require us to pay a fee to use, for example, I can tell you we'd have zero interest. I have a perfectly fine system that generates sales and doesn't cost me anything. I don't know if this would even allow us, to hook up in the way that, in a manner that would actually be useful for us to honor our vendor agreements. I think the only thing that I would add to this dialogue, and I'll continue to take the next few days to think about it before council, but if the only intended use for this right now is the draft, and we've got maybe some other ideas of how it could be used at Lake Park, but then our permanent use is the shipyard, I feel like we should be really thoughtful and intentional about planning for the shipyard then, rather than trying to force it into the draft, because I really don't see this generating more revenue just because we have it than what a normal portable event would set up for the draft. And so, again, I don't want to be objectionable about it because I see the valid points with other areas, and I'm looking at one small piece of the discussion, right? But I want to, again, just think about how that looks. And Dan and I talked about this earlier today too, and just to kind of piggyback on your point about the ARPA interest. And I did have another department head that reached out to me last week and wanted to know if I would support the use of ARPA interest for something they wanted. And so, Danny mentioned, right, that there's enough funding in there to cover this, but I still just think we don't know how much funding there is and what the other priorities are, so I just kind of been just wanted to at least bring that up, right, that if we do this, I'm gonna have a hard time responding to that other department head and explaining why I said, yeah, fast track this one, but I put them on ice. So I just at least wanted to offer that perspective, so.
Yeah, and if there's an interest, prior to council, I'm sure the finance director can supply very specific information as far as how much is available in the ARPA interest fund and what projects have been approved.
Yeah, and again, I want to be clear that my comments are not meant, again, to track this. I'm going to leave that up to the Parks Committee, right? If it's a good idea, it's a good idea, and whatever, and if it's not, well, then, whatever, that's up to you guys to debate right now. But just at least since our organization was brought up, wanted to really give the disclaimer around the conflict piece, so.
Okay.
Is there a requirement to put a slab down for this?
There is not unless it's kind of sitting there for more than 6 months.
Okay.
So it could sit on grass, it could sit on a gravel base, it could sit on the asphalt parking lot. I think they recommend a minimum of a gravel base.
Yeah, 12-inch, gravel base, yes, is what they recommend. So,
Okay.
about 6 inches bigger than the actual container, so it'd be about a 21 by 9 foot gravel base, 12 inches deep. That's what it would sit on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is this unit custom built? Like, these photos seem like stock images, right? So, and again, I just go back to if the permanent use is shipyard, right? Like, are we custom building this to work there, or is it meant to be built in a way that we're moving it to other parks, like Alder DeLee had asked?
Again, the intention is to have it at permanently at shipyard. So it's being built with the intent of it being permanently at shipyard. Right now, I don't think the intent right now, unless it's something that we want to explore further, like Dan said, and it also comes with additional considerations with how we move it. It can be moved, but I think for the other events, as Alder DeLee described, like the pickleball event, we would look at maybe for that event, putting up our 10 by 10 tent and having, kind of bringing our little bar in and having the sales from that instead of bringing in this entire thing. Those conversations I know we haven't had yet, but depending on the size and scope of the event and what we want to do, I think then we determine what makes sense in each proposal, I guess.
And part of if I could just kind of put a bow on that, and part of the reason I'm asking Jameson, I don't want to do a disservice to the dialogue, right? Recognizing that these are, again, what seem like stock images, right? But just, I go back to the design and making sure that if we're going to do this, it aligns with what the permanent use is, right? Because, as I'm looking at these images, right, not only is the design kind of like more carnival-ish on one of these, but, just recognizing, do we really need access on both sides, or is this just a one-side type of cutout, right, versus some of the other, like whether it's coolers, taps, whatever else, right, that you put on the inside. And I just didn't know if this was like something they had sitting in inventory that they're trying to, it's ready to deliver and sell, or if it's something that they would build based on our needs.
They would build it to our specification.
Okay.
And I do want to point out too that if you look at some of the images, you'll see that some of the images have like a stage on top.
Mhm.
That's the actual one that we're looking at purchasing.
That one, right?
Yes, that one there. And so that could be used, if you want, you can put a band up there. The other option is you could just put tables and chairs up there just for casual seating.
Or potentially rent it out, or have whether it's a bachelorette party, or a group from a business or a company, renting it out, kind of reserving that space. Those are options as well.
Just adds a little bit of uniqueness instead of a traditional concession trailer, like what we would buy at Bay Beach Amusement Park.
So if it were to be moved to different locations, and you're saying it has to have this gravel, or I'm assuming it could be on a cement if it's in a parking lot? That would be
Yep.
something you could.
Mhm.
The two-level one, I don't know, I guess I'm just wondering if there's a way to get one that's a little less money and not have it be the two level one, I guess more like the carnival one, I guess is how Alder Johnson said. This one, these images up here don't seem to be just the description at all of what you're looking at. It's mostly, it's this one right here.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so the two-story is the thing that you think is useful?
I think it's something that we prefer based on the fact that I think we're trying to be unique a little bit too. Other container bars that see around the area or in different park locations, might not have that amenity, and it's something that we thought could kind of stand out and also be utilized. The amount that it would drop the price on it would not be that dramatic to where you'd save a ton. I mean, I think there's other ways to possibly look at saving on the overall budget if you want to look into that.
Well, the unit itself's 42,000, but then all this other stuff is added, set up and all of that, and then the extra. Okay, anybody else have any other comments?
Sure.
Yes,
Thanks,
Alder
Chair.
Weary.
Well, these fine alders here already answered, asked all my questions, so I don't know if I have so much as questions.
Comments?
I'm inclined to support it right now. I think it's forward thinking, I like it. I would like to see some information, hopefully by next week, on the ARPA money, other projects in the query that maybe feel slighted, or, I'd like to know how much do we have in there, is this jumping ahead of others? We always get that problem with parks, one park wants to jump ahead of another. Well, here, is this project jumping ahead of another? But is it just the timing that it came to us kind of this late? Because and if it did, it's fine, but I was kind of great on that we have these last minute decisions to make. But to me, sometimes you can't avoid it, I get it. It's nice to.
Comment on that?
Yeah.
I mean, so there's many different, I'll call it dialogues going on. And in particular, there's a couple of them. There's one with how parks, as Dan said, we approved parks being able to sell, beer and, fermented malt beverages within the park system. And so that's a whole entire conversation that we've been having within our Parks Department about how we're going to do that, where we're going to do that, how many events are we going to try out in 2025 here to try to, explore that and raise some revenue with that opportunity, and also bring people together, like I said, at these different events. So that conversation was going on. At the same time, the Draft City Music Fest conversation is going on. And, these kind of conversations kind of blended together, and that was the timing. Now, this group that we were working with, they said typically they would have started this project 2 months ago if it was up to them. So that's when we were having conversations and where this opportunity came up.
I mean, I don't know that much about this business. It seems like it could be based on other cities, profitable and a good draw. I'm open to listening to more council, but right now I'm in favor of it.
Okay, and anything else?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Alder Weary, second by Alder Presley. And I do want to add a few comments. I like the idea of it. I like the revenue generator. I just have a concern about, I guess I was at the Finance Committee meeting last night and hearing DPW sharing their future needs and trying to put that on there, and understanding that's really important. So I guess I lean towards, I'd love to set up a tent and things have that set up and try to raise revenue towards something like this. That's my feeling. Just because I do know that there's other things out there that the money could be used for city services. So it's a tough one for me, because I think it's a great project. It's just as far as the money aspect of it. So my thought. All right.
Albert?
Yes.
So the only other thing that I would add is, just for me generally, and again, I shared this with James and Dan earlier, right? I have extreme reservation with rushing to spend money on something, whether it's a good idea or not, right? When we're not really sure what that use is going to be, right? And if the intent here is to get it here for the draft, and that's the only reason, right? When the long-term home is the shipyard, which we probably won't need for another year, right? That would just be the only other thing that I'd throw out there. So I think think we really gotta have a plan for what we're gonna do with this, and not just we're gonna buy it, let it sit at Lake Park all summer, maybe it gets used, maybe it doesn't. When we can delay that expense for a year then, and actually design it and permanently install into the shipyard right away. So that'd just be the only other thing, because this is my personal opinion as someone who is involved on organizing large-scale events on a regular basis, this isn't gonna be the thing that drives new beer sales at that event. Might be something cool to look at, but, other things will, you'll sell just as much beer either way, whether it's a portable bar or a permanent one. And so I just want to make sure that we're not making a decision, right, that's exclusively about the draft and then we don't really do anything with it after, because then I would just wait a year. And I would love to just offer, again, as someone who's been around this type of stuff, offer maybe, if you want, right, like, I'd be happy to review and look at it and let you know if the design that you're looking at is something that's truly functional for its intended purpose, and I just offer that up as someone who works in that space a lot.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, say nay. Nay. And the ayes have it. All right, moving to the next agenda item. I have to get back there. Okay, number 2, consideration with possible action on hiring ISG to complete engineering bid documents for the alternate proposed revisions to the shelter site and stage design at Lake Memorial Park. And I know that was added on, it was amended, so hopefully everybody had a chance to look at that. Director?
Yes, and I apologize for the last-minute addition to the agenda item. This is a fairly large ticket dollar amount for us to consider without a lot of research and review time, and I apologize. We were hoping that the proposal would come sooner than it did, but we kind of pushed ISG to get us the proposal as quickly as they could. So let me give you a little bit of background information to start with. So what you see on the screen right now is the existing concept as it's currently designed. So as you know, we hired ISG to construct detailed engineering documents to bid out the entire project. They got partially through the design, and this is how far they got as far as the conceptual design goes. So you can see that there's a stage element, there's a lot of site work that's involved in stormwater management. But then on the left-hand side, you'll see that that's the shelter with restrooms and kind of another concession beer garden area. In this design, you'll see that the bathrooms, it's hard to tell in this image, but the restrooms are closest to the parking lot in the back. The concession windows are right in the middle of the building. There is an upper seating balcony above the concessions and the bathrooms. So somebody can actually sit on the upper story balcony. It's a flat roof and kind of view the stage performance.
So that's all the way to the left, just so I can.
Yeah, so I can
talk about, okay.
So the restrooms are here,
Okay.
the concession area is here, the upper seating balcony is up here. There is, behind the building, closer to the road, there's an ADA accessible walkway that leads up to the upper story balcony. And then that image of the kind of the shelter portion with the cathedral ceiling right here, that would be a rentable shelter area that we can use for different programs. For the parks, we can rent it out. They can use it for events, for concerts. So there's a lot of different options. So ISG kind of was moving forward with this design. There's also, I forgot to mention, some a staircase going down to the water, which currently we don't have on site. So ISG started putting together this concept. They took it as far as they did. The building itself for the shelter, it's a functional building. I mean, it gets the job done. It accomplishes the task that we asked them to design. But as we got moving forward with the design, we felt that it was lacking a couple other key components that was very important to the city and also on Broadway when we hired ISG. And we felt that maybe there were a few very important things that we should maybe reevaluate. So one of those is the shelter portion, which is adjacent to the river. You'll see that there's a big concrete wall separating that from the upper balcony. The complication with that is if you're sitting in that upper balcony, having that cathedral ceiling shelter area, that blocks your view of the river when you're sitting up there. In addition, it also blocks the view of the skyline. The other thing that is kind of lacking from this design is we asked ISG to kind of match the architecture of the stage. Well, both buildings kind of evolved at different stages. I guess I didn't intend to say that. They evolved differently at different times, and the architecture from the two just never meshed. They felt like two very completely different buildings, and as a staff, and I don't want to speak for Alder Johnson, but we really liked the stage design, and we felt that was really unique and sculptural. And that's kind of the last component that's missing in the design for the building is the structural, or the sculptural component of the building. So we really wanted a facility that was a showcase for the city, and we could point to it, and when somebody's driving over the bridge, they see it and they go, wow, that's something unique and special, something that's different from any other, park or facility in the area. And the design of that building just never came to fruition, and so we asked them to just kind of halt the design for now. And we asked them to develop, several other concepts for that building. Something that maybe met the intent of all of our criteria instead of the functional aspects of it. And so that's where you see in our proposal what this is. So they moved ahead, created some other concepts, and this is what they came up with for a redesign of that building. Still has the exact same components as the original design, but it's in a more sculptural format. So I'm going to just kind of page to the layout here, or the site design, so you can see a little bit more of where things are placed. So in this concept, the restrooms would be here, which is adjacent to the building, which is very similar to the existing design. But now the rentable shelter area, instead of it being off to the side here blocking the view, it's actually in the middle. And you can still do a very high ceiling, cathedral ceiling, and make that a grand space. And then the concession area is off to the side. And you can serve from a concession window directly into this space, or we can have an outside window directly into the beer garden area, which is here. In the original design, the beer garden was here. Now it's being focused here. This redesign does not change anything else as it relates to the stage or the site design, with the exception of the beer garden. So I'll kind of go back to the original rendering here. The other thing that's different is the upper story balcony. So it's no longer on top of the building like it was before. Where that upper story balcony is located is the lower beer garden area and an upper beer garden area that you can just walk up this staircase and go around. Really, that just functioned better. It created a nicer experience from a beer garden standpoint that just seemed a little more artistic and a little more cohesive to the design. So we settled, as a staff, we settled on this concept being our preferred concept. It really met all the criteria. The architecture really matches each other. It's really a sculptural piece that makes a statement, and it meets all of the criteria we asked with the design. So now the question becomes, how much does it cost? And you'll see in the proposal that the total cost to complete the engineering from right now, from today to the end of the project, is a proposal for $505,000. Now, what I want to point out is that the engineering is not completed for the first design yet. So if you really want to compare apples to apples, our consultant also put together their final costs on what it would be to complete the engineering for the first option, which is the existing design. And so in order to complete the engineering for the first design, we will have to spend $224,400 is their current estimate for fees. So in any scenario, the city does have to pay that much just to complete the engineering drawings with the original design. I do want to mention that to date, we've already spent $244,000 in engineering fees to get us to where we're at. So roughly you're at about, I'm just ballparking the math here, but $475,000 for all of the engineering in the first design as you see it. Now, for option 2, like I said, the cost to finish the design from today till the end comes out to $505,000. So if you really want to know you really have to calculate out the difference between the two to know how much the additional design fee will be to go with this design versus the other one. So if you do the math, it comes out to approximately $280,000 in additional design fees between the two options to create final engineered drawings and specifications for the entire site to bid it out in 3 different construction contracts. So it's comparing apples to apples. So then the funding for this is all coming out of our TID5 funding. So TID5 closes in December of 2026. This is a project that was already previously approved by the City Council as a project to close out that funding and that TID. So I reviewed the budget with the finance director, and she did verify that there is enough money in that TID to go with either option, either continue with the existing design or to proceed with the revised design. Then the question becomes, are the construction costs about the same between the two? So our consultant with doing a very preliminary look at the construction budget, the cost to build the first concept, the engineer's estimate is $3.2 million. The current engineer's estimate for just that building is $3.6 million. So it's an additional $400,000 in construction costs to build this building versus the first one. So I guess what we're here to talk about tonight is, do we like the revised design enough to spend an additional $280,000 in engineering fees and potentially another $400,000 in construction fees? I did also verify with the finance director that there is enough money in the TID to cover the costs for the additional construction fees. So there would be enough money to finish the engineering, bid out the soil remediation work, which has to be bid out first where this building is going, and then also bid out the construction of the building and the beer garden area. So basically, there's enough money in the TID to build everything from this point to the road, with the exception of the stairs. The stairs are not engineered yet, so the stairs would have to be built likely as part of the site work and the stage. Everything else would be built after the fact, and that is where On Broadway is currently focusing their fundraising efforts to fund the stage and the site work and the staircase going down to the water. And what we committed to initially in this project when we looked at the budget and the fundraising packet is the city would commit, X number of dollars in TID funding to build the shelter building and beer garden area.
So just so I understand, so I know you're talking about stage off to the left, but isn't that also a stage on the right with the white over?
So when I say stage, this is the stage. So the stage and all of this site work would be built as a phase 3 project. It'll all be engineered as part of this fee, but it wouldn't be built right away because we don't have money to build that portion. That's where the fundraising component comes in. What the city has money to commit to construct is the engineering fees and everything from here to the road, with the exception of this staircase.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Although,
Oh,
if I just add a little bit
Okay.
more context.
okay.
So Dan did a great recap, and I think just what he had alluded to, right, with the original design. I think just a lot of the groups and individuals working on this just kind of felt like underwhelmed, by the design, and felt that for such a visible site, that we really ought to have something that can pack a punch, right? And this is our opportunity, high traffic area, high impact area, right? We wanted something that could really be unique to Green Bay. And so that's why you see the stage designed the way that it is, and to Dan's credit, we always wanted to see that pavilion match the design, right? It makes sense, so that it looks like a cohesive venue. The stage is really meant to also act as like a piece of public art, so when things are not going on there, it can be programmed with different lighting schemes and things, right, to really kind of showcase it as still an attractive place to be. And I think sometimes it's always been the friction, and I call it positive friction, right? And that's are we designing a park, or are we designing an event venue? And I think we did a really great job with coming up with a hybrid model, right, that can achieve both. And we did bring in, on the stage side, we did bring in a stage expert, right, that designed stages across the country to really provide their insight, and they could understand kind of what we're trying to do, and so that was really helpful. And when you just ultimately look at the three phases, right, there's sort of the site work that needs to be done, and we have an obligation for that TIF funding through the MOU that was approved with the RDA. That has to be spent by the end of 2026. Okay, so the reason this is split up right now as phases is because we want to make sure that we've got enough funding, or a design, right, that can move far enough along to justify the expenditure of that funding. And it just so happens that that level of funding is very closely aligned to the cost of that pavilion. And it just makes more sense, right, to build a stage but not have a pavilion, or, the pavilion makes more sense to go first. And you don't want to go out to bid on a project if you don't have all the funding secured. So our organization, we've secured $350,000 so far towards the project. We paused our fundraising efforts while we were redesigning this because we didn't want to be selling a vision that might look different. And so we'll obviously reignite that, assuming council gets on board with this here. But we would still, we're still selling a vision though, right? Which is everything together, and I just think that's important to recognize because that's the end goal. It's not just to do the pavilion, it's everything, though the construction of it just might be timed out a little bit differently. Just kind of wanted to at least provide that additional perspective on why it's being split into phases. So.
And, it's a collaborative effort. So basically what I'm hearing is the new design is more desirable.
Infinitely more desirable from the folks that I've talked to because it addresses some of the shortcomings that Dan, highlighted around the original design.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I love the new design. I think it's artsy, really. So it is like a sculpture, really.
And from a staff perspective, we would recommend approval because we really like the new design too. It meets all of the initial goals that was our vision for the design from day one.
And if you look at the cost to construct, right, for the whole thing and what you're engineering, 8% would be $560,000. So the amount that is in the contract is right in alignment with what you would typically expect for engineering fees on any type of project. So that part has been vetted by staff, of course, but it's absolutely in alignment with what you would expect. And this just happens to be the next step if we're going to get to a final product and get that money out of that TID account when it's due.
Okay, thank you.
What is your timeline on this project?
So the timeline, as Alder Johnson alluded to, is with the funding for this building, we have to spend it by December of 2026. There is no exception to that. So it's an aggressive timeline to get this engineered and bid out, whether we stick with the original design or redesign it. But our consultant felt that they could still meet our required deadline with either option.
For the square.
For the
basically.
square area, correct. Everything else, there is no set deadline as far as when phase 3 would be completed. That's strictly dependent on cost and when the funding is available.
It's possible, right? Though I'm not naive, I'm pragmatic, right? It's possible if the donations just come flying in very fast, right? You could do this all at once, but Dan's talked about sort of the city obligation of this overall project. Our commitment to fundraising is actually more than what the city will put into it based on the cost to do the overall facility. So that's why I'm just trying to be pragmatic, right? To raise that amount of money and still be able to meet these deadlines is probably gonna be challenging.
Mhm.
Got faith, yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that looks great. Let's move ahead with it, and hopefully the fundraising can match it, and this can be built by the end of 2026.
The whole thing. The pressure's on. Okay, was that a motion?
Sure.
Okay, motion
I'll
to.
second that.
All right, motion by Alder Weary, seconded by Alder Delete. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those, it passes. I guess I don't have to say those that are against it. And so we're on to, I think, Director's Report, yes.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I have to add to the director's report is we are opening Triangle Hill tomorrow.
Yay!
So we were able
I
to
just
make,
asked you about
we were
that.
able to make snow to open some of the tubing lanes.
So you're
Yeah,
pushing snow up on the hill.
It's just so darn cold.
This week, we've been pushing the snow around, yes.
Yeah, if people can really
Like a
bundle up.
council event.
I gotta ask, who's the person that has to climb up that hill and put the stake in the top of it while you're making snow?
Oh, boy. They have to climb the hill? Why can't they go up the?
I don't know. It's like every time they started making snow, they had to keep moving the stake up
Stuff on
higher.
the board. Gotta do the tough stuff.
Oh, okay, you can't go up the walk, or the road. So that's
Or-
it?
That's it.
Okay.
Short straw.
So looking for a motion on the director's report?
Motion received and placed on file.
Second.
Okay, motion by Elder Weary, seconded by Elder Delee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and that has been received and placed on file. Our next meeting is January 29th. And
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Elder Delee,
Second.
seconded by Elder Presley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and we are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
It wasn't germane to the meeting, so I didn't mention it in my comments, but this tree is enormous. in the
Yeah, where are you
rendering.
getting that one?
Well, we're keeping it. So
That's a big-
we're trying to retain as many of the trees as possible that are there.
Is that a real tree?